Want to know how new construction is affecting the Boise market? Stay tuned. Hi everybody, Rick Powell here from the Powell Fine Homes Group and Real Broker LLC. Last week we had somebody on our YouTube channel post a question, how is new construction affecting the market? And I thought it was a great question, so here's a video on it. And also, I tried a first run of this video and I wound up getting way into the weeds on it. So if you like a lot of data and a lot of the nuances that affect new home construction and why they price how they do and sometimes why they can drop prices and sometimes why they can't, go jump over to our podcast. It's available on, Apple iTunes. It's available on Amazon. It's available, I think it's on Spotify as well. But just look for the Powell Fine Homes Real Estate Show. And we've got our podcast up there, and that one's, I believe, 36 minutes long. Far more detail than we're going to go into today because it's YouTube, and YouTube likes shorter videos. So that's what we're doing. How is new construction affecting Boise's market? Overall, it's not bad, to be honest. Last quarter of last year, completely different conversation. They were dropping price left and right. This year, it's stabilized quite a bit. And I want to talk a little bit in the weeds, but mostly how it's affecting us. But first and foremost, let's talk about builders' margin. The margin's the profit they make, the gross profit and the net profit. And it matters because when they have a lot of margin to work with, they can drop prices and it doesn't really kill their profitability to the point where they have to worry about going bankrupt and having foreclosures on the properties and things like that. That's a key component that they have today that they didn't have in 2008 when we had the Great Recession. You saw just entire subdivisions going up for foreclosure and everything. They're in a much better position right now. Historically speaking, I've got some data here, so I'm going to look down and up every once in a while. According to the National Association of Home Builders, up to 2020, tract builders, big, large tract builders, that would be your Lennar, your Toll Brothers, any either national or large regional builder, they were averaging just over 18% gross margin, and they had a net margin after everything about 7%. Now, I know from all the different reports I read on a weekly and monthly basis that in 2021, in the first part of 2022, those margins were well under the 20%, and for some builders, they're actually starting to bump 30% for their gross margins, certainly smaller on the net margin, but they had a lot more margin than they historically had dealt with. How they got there was a couple of things. Number one, the rising market. A rising tide lifts all boats. So in addition to the pricing increases they were having on top of their commodity increases and their labor increases because of all the shortage created by COVID, the market kept coming up too. So lumber, for example, was 75% more expensive in the middle of 2021 than it is right now today. That jacked the price up because commodities cost more. When the price dropped 75%, they didn't bring their prices down because of that. Any price reduction they've had has been because of the real estate market price pressure, not because they're being altruistic, because the price of their main line item, serious line cost for a property came down 75%. No, that's not about that. It's because people wouldn't pay over a certain price, so they just had to reflect market reality. To make the long story short, they had much better margins the last few years than they had in 2008. So when the shift came and they had to lower prices, they were still operating at their historical margins, if not slightly above still. So that was good news for us. So how are we seeing the builders around town react and respond to the shift? Now, of course, like we talked about, fourth quarter of last year, we saw a ton of price reductions left and right. But now that the panic's over and people have a chance to respond in a measured manner, let's talk about what we're seeing. In some builders, we're seeing them stop any new construction whatsoever. Basically, if, say, by November or December of last year, if the forms for the foundation were poured and the concrete was in, they're going forward with that house. But that's as far as they're going. They're not breaking any new ground. They're just waiting and seeing to what's going on. And we went back to saw those people last month, and they're still in the same position, basically, waiting to see if the market improves enough to where they can go ahead and start breaking ground, or if they need to preserve their cash and ride this out. We'll see. We have other ones like Hunter Boise Homes, or Boise Hunter Homes, excuse me. One of our favorites, honestly. Those guys in Toll Brothers understand light, they understand flow, they understand design. We love seeing their homes. More importantly, we love selling their homes too. But anyway, they're approaching it in a way that I really admire. They have, for Dry Creek, the big one out in the Eagle, let's take that for an example. They still have a lot of land in there. They're still moving forward building their homes, but they're selling off some of the lots to custom builders who will build homes that are consistent with the neighborhood. They'll look like they belong in the neighborhood. It's going to be a different floor plan and elevation and everything else. It's not like they're building the Boise Hunter floor plan, but they are selling that off, it keeps their cash flow going. It keeps homes in the neighborhood looking consistent. You don't have vacant lots spread out among houses that are finished, and it will keep the pricing up in the neighborhood. So great move. We like that. We're seeing other ones getting far more aggressive on their buyer incentives. We've seen, depending on the price point, but like you get up towards $1 million, it's not unusual to get somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000, $75,000. We even saw one builder that was pushing $100,000 last year. I think they've come down from that, but up to $100,000 in buyer incentives. It could be used to buy your rate down. It could be used to get free upgrades. Look how you do it. I mean, and the $100,000 was an exception. It was only one builder I think I saw of that high. But $30,000, $50,000, $60,000, especially when you're getting into the million or just over $1 million price range, we were seeing that. But say at $700,000, it wasn't unusual to see $30,000 incentives towards that. Something that we didn't see over the last 3 years. Also, we're seeing all the builders working with realtors again. There was a period between 2021 and even early 22, and some of the builders where they really weren't playing ball with the realtors too much. They were just like, nope, business is too good, go away. And now, hey, you walk in and they want to see you. That's good, because buyers get fair representation, and you can, as an agent, you can fight for your buyers like in a much better way than you could before, because the builders are more open to concessions because they want to sell a house. So that is how we're seeing most of the builders respond. So let's talk about Ada County specifically. Right now, as of today, and today is the 28th of March, we have 1,267 single-family homes for sale. Of that, we have 279 units are new construction units, never been built, never been lived in. They're brand new. The 279 on 1,267 is about 22, almost 23% of the homes in the market. So say roughly a quarter of our homes for sale right now are new construction. And that's fairly healthy, because quite honestly, you're not going to see a gigantic spike in existing homes coming on the market. We'll see some. We'll certainly see the seasonality. We're already seeing more homes this week than we had last. 2 weeks ago, we had, I think it was 1,012 active listings. This was for all of Ada County, and this was maybe 10 days ago. And today we got 1,267. So, there's 250 homes there. So it jumped by almost 25%. But most of the front loading, March and April, is when you see the big spike, and then we'll see what happens after that, because days on market have stretched out and interest rates are popping up all over. Right now, I looked at the 10-year mortgage, the 10-year Treasury bill right before I started filming this. It's bouncing around between 3.5 and 3.6 today. And mortgage rates, the average 30-year mortgage rate now is anywhere between 6.3 and 6.6. It depends on your credit and how much down and all the other stuff. But mid-6s is still a reality for mortgage rates, which is far better than the 7% we had earlier this month and the 7% plus that we had back in October. So they're fluctuating right now. The bank scare is pushed off to the side. I don't think we're completely through it right now. But the markets are reacting as if they're not worried about it right now. They're back to focusing on whether or not the Fed's going to raise rates again next month. Who knows? We'll see. Going back to the mortgage rates that people have, the existing mortgage rates, over 70% of the homeowners, and you've heard me say this a million times, but over 70% of the homeowners right now have a sub 4% mortgage rate. And of that, I think somewhere north of 60% of that group has sub 3.5% mortgage rate. So you've got to ask yourself, what's going to cause somebody with a 3.5% mortgage or less to trade that for a 6.5% mortgage? And short of death, divorce, job transfer, or literally physically outgrowing a house, not much. So we're going to see the seasonality this year that we normally see, but we're not going to see anywhere near the flood of inventory we would have had back in, say, 2008. So, and if you go back then, we actually broke 5,000 homes at one point in the entire Boise metro. Had Ada County, Jim, Boise County, all of those. Right now, just in Ada County alone, we have 1,200. It's just, we can't get there from here. So, without a huge overhang of inventory, you can't have massive price drops because you have a supply and demand issue. And I've gone over that a bunch of times, but just to put that in an eggshell right now, or a nutshell rather, we have, demographically speaking, you look at the Gen Z, Gen Y, millennials, that group, when you put them all together, is larger than the baby boomer demographic. The last time we had a demographic push where we had a huge slug of people, population-wise, demographically speaking, coming into that first-time home owner age, 30 years old, is prime first-time home buyer, and the largest subset of that Gen Y, Z, and millennial group turns 30 in 2025. So we're coming up to that. Last time we had that was 1978. And also in 78 to 82, we had high inflation. We had energy shock prices. We had all kinds of nonsense going on there. Now, it's harder to buy a house today than it was then. Don't get me wrong. Houses were far cheaper. Even though you had 18% mortgage rates, you only had $70,000 houses. So when you compare true apples to apples, it is more expensive to buy a house today than it was back then, no matter what they say. Okay, last point before we start wrapping it up. We're about to start seeing some really horrible year-over-year median price numbers, percentage-wise. Brace yourself for that. All the damage has already happened last year. Between the fourth quarter of last year and January, even into February a little bit, that was when the huge price contraction, if you were, in the median price happened. And you have to understand that just because the median price is coming down doesn't mean your home is literally worth X percent less than it was this time last year. Real estate's local, and the sales in your neighborhood matter far more, especially if they've happened in the last 3 or 4 months, than what the median price is doing. When interest rates go up, it affects the high end far more than it does the low end because money gets more expensive, and over $1 million home's mortgage payment is far higher than that of a $500,000 home. Less people can afford it. Therefore, you sell less high-end homes. The median number that everybody quotes and everybody talks about and says, oh, the median's come down. The median is the exact middle point of the entire price spectrum that's sold within a given month. So when they say March's median sale price is down 18% year over year, there's a lot of things to unpack there. It's not just that the $500,000 home last year is now worth $420,000. No, it's nothing like that at all. It's just saying that last year they sold a lot more high-end homes, which drove the price point up. And now they're selling a lot fewer, and there's more homes focused on the lower end because money costs more with the mortgages. So it's a reflection of what's happening in the homes that are selling in the market. It does not mean your home is worth 18% less than it was last year. And you're going to hear me beat on that drum throughout this year and probably the first part of next year because it's going to be a constant news item. They're going to be focusing because fear sells and clickbait sells. So you're going to hear about how bad the median prices declined than the good things in the market. And quite honestly, we have more good things to talk about in the market today right now than we have had to talk about in the last 4 or 5 months. Take that for what it's worth. All right, let's wrap it up. I know you've been waiting for that. So have I. So in a nutshell, how does new construction affect our market? Right now, they're about 23% of the active homes for sale. Now, they take a little bit longer to sell than the existing homes. Right now, the average is about 88 days on market for new construction versus 60 for an existing home. So we've got an extra couple weeks there. Almost 3, actually 3 weeks extra. The price reductions we're seeing right now, last part of March, are pretty much equal between what we're seeing come down in the same price band. A $700,000 new home construction, any price reduction they have is in line with what we're seeing in a $700,000 existing home. Assuming both homes were priced close to being correct. Like if you go out right now with a home that's priced properly to the market, you might actually see multiple offers. Last week we saw some multiple offers. Right now the interest rates floated up a little bit. You might see a few less. But if you come out on market priced where you should be, the home's going to sell quickly. And quite honestly, if it appears to be a good enough value, you'll get in multiple offers and you may wind up getting more than you thought you were going to get for it. That's a good thing. Also, since key component prices have come down on the builder side, lumber, which is one of their biggest line items, is think of all the framing and wood that goes into a house between the frames and the roof and everything else. That's come down 75% since middle of May. Copper is down double digits as well, not anywhere near as far as lumber did, but it's down about 20%. So 2 of the biggest material items have come down significantly. So they have room to move and come down. And as they build the new houses that are actually going into construction right now, since those components are so much cheaper, they can actually come out and price reflective of that cheaper material as well. So they won't need to have the price reductions if they come out priced where they should be to begin with. The final point, and this is going to be a constant throughout the year, is interest rates are key. If the interest rates stabilize right now at 6.5%, we'll see the amount of buyers we've been seeing. We'll see a few more as we get into summertime. But you shouldn't see a bunch of price reductions going on, and you shouldn't see a lack of buyers coming through. If rates come down, you'll see more buyers, more multiples, homes will sell quicker. If they have some kind of event that drives the interest rates up where they start getting up into 7 again, you're probably going to see price reductions and you're going to see less buyers. That's just this market-driven demand. It is what it is. But ultimately, there are far more people coming into that first-time home buyer age that have the income to buy a home. So that's a safety net we didn't have in 2008 that we do have today as well, in that there's built-in demand. You also don't have the forced credit sales where people's loans re-amortized and all of a sudden they had $10,000 a month payments, which destroyed their credit at the same time. And it also sidelined all those people who were homeowners, lost their home, got their credit destroyed. They couldn't buy again for anywhere between 4 and 7 years. So we don't have that lack of buyers right there as well. So there was a bunch of whammies, double whammies, triple whammies in 2008 that we aren't dealing with today, and we're not going to have to deal with today. That's great news. So I hope this answered your question. Right now in Boise, new construction is actually a good thing. It's not the answer I thought I was going to have 6 months ago, but I'm very glad I have it today. Please like our channel. Please like this video. If there's another video you'd like to see, drop it in the comments or send me an email or a DM. We'd be happy to do it. And once again, if you want the heavily detailed version of this, it's on our podcast at the Powell Fine Homes Real Estate Show, available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. Anywhere you go to podcasts, you should be able to find it. If you can't, let me know what channel you'd like to see it on. We'll make sure it shows up there. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.